so my journey started with complete ignorance. And then I got to a place where now I'm starting to talk to people, but still don't know really that I can negotiate a contract myself. Like, what do you mean I can negotiate a contract? What do you mean I can go back to my boss if they've said you're earning $23 an hour and tell them, no, I want 25? It took me a really long time to do that.
I went from working for myself to working for an international employer as opposed to a Kenyan employer. Difference in terms of the approach and everything, because for them, when you say, I don't know, it means that they need to teach you. They need to find something, a course and everything. One major one that I really picked up and I tell people you must learn is Excel. Excel has so many elements. Yo! Hello, my name is Baldina Kasema. On the socials, I'm still Baldina Kasema, and this is the Ages and Stages podcast, KE. We are so glad to be here today. Welcome to this week's edition, and I'm here with my fabulous co-host, the one and only.
Hi guys, this is Dee. Things Dee says on the socials. Welcome to this week's episode of Ages and Stages, where we have discussions about the intersection between our journey through formal education and what we've learned through the school of life.
And I like that. What age and what stage? What age are you? What stage are you?
Yeah.
What age were you at? And what
When
stage
this
were you
happened.
at?
Yeah.
And today we have a fabulous topic generally. And it's about your first job, and generally jobs as well, but then your first exact job. So what was your first job?
Something really pivotal. Oh my gosh. My first job was in Australia. I worked at a Euros shop. Euros is what Australians call kebab. What's called kebab here is called a Euros in Australia.
Kebab.
Yeah. So it was a Euros shop. So basically making lamb Euros, chicken Euros, that kind of thing. But it was one of those jobs where I was fresh. I was in uni. I was fresh in Australia, very, very young. It was in a mall right opposite uni. And I remember seeing a job ad. They had printed, they wanted staff. So I was so excited when I got the call that I got the job. And little did I know it was underpaying me. They were giving me, cash chini ya meza.
Under the table,
Yeah, under the table.
They're not paying you officially.
No, because I'm not on the books means I can't get superannuation, which is, the Australian version of pension. So I was getting $10 an hour. That was my first ever job.
Wow, $10 an hour is quite a lot for Kenya at the moment, Kenya.
Okay,
yes, for Australia, no,
but
for Kenya.
Yeah,
I think the minimum wage in
underpaid.
Australia is about $22, so you're being paid about, give or take, $12 less.
Yeah, minimum wage at that point would have been different.
It would have been a little different.
It keeps
yes,
changing,
yes.
But still, I was being underpaid. so yeah.
Here comes
what was your job? What was your first job?
My first job, I think. Now, this would be an interesting one because I first started by working in a business, building my own business. So my first job, I actually got my first job.
For yourself?
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually got my first job in my late 20s.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that a little crazy?
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yes,
your first ever job in your late 20s.
In my late 20s. But it's because the vision was never really to have a job. I was looking to
be an
run
entrepreneur.
and build a business. And I always knew that this was something that I really wanted to do. So getting my job, and it was around COVID time. So that was an interesting shift around then, but quite exciting. Really well. But here comes...
How are you getting your first ever job during COVID? Like, that's character development on top of that's
Let me
crazy.
tell you, and then it's heartbreaking because my business had just taken a dip, like a serious dip. I couldn't sustain myself. I couldn't pay my rent. I couldn't drive my car. I couldn't move around as easily. So I was moving back home with no business because no one was buying anything during COVID. Everyone was a little scared. And then it's skincare. Skincare is considered a luxury. It's not really a necessity.
So when you're facing a glable pandemic, people are literally like,
Yes. So then suddenly, now I'm starting looking in my head. I'm like, I've had to sustain myself.
Yeah.
Hence why I went into looking for a job.
Yeah.
So it was quite
We were baking
interesting.
banana bread. Beldina was getting jobs. Wow. Wow.
For the first time, and that was it. But then that's why I keep saying that what's meant for you is actually yours, because it will find you at the time that you actually really, really need it.
So at 20 something, late 20s, is that fair to say? You're getting your first job. This is your first ever job in your life.
In my life.
How do you know what to negotiate? Did you know to negotiate your contract or to talk about salary, or were you just like, give me the job, I'll sign wherever?
Now, one of the things that I really appreciate a business background from is knowing value and building a lot of different character, because it builds different characters within you and different aptitudes, I'd say, because you're always facing customers who are negotiating a price, talking about standard price, knowing the value of something. And I think this is something that I really was keen to apply within myself as well. So when I was looking at for a job at that point, in my head I knew the value and I knew what I was bringing to the table, and because of this, ideally it really did allow me to be able to negotiate in terms of that. But I am aware that the people who the first time you get your job, you really do not know that you can negotiate, or you should negotiate, or the thing they put on the table is not necessarily the final, that there should be room to be able to talk.
No, I didn't know that at all.
So I want to start off from at what point you saw the advert, so you walked into the shop and said, I need a job.
Yeah, so I saw it was the mall, right? So I'm walking. I used to love eating gyros, so I went to the gyro shop and I saw like a A4 poster, help wanted, however many days a week. And at that time, because I was on a student visa, I could only work 20 hours a week.
Okay.
And so I was just like, hi, this job, I've just seen the ad. And they were like, oh, okay, if you're interested, drop us your CV. So I went back to uni, printed my CV, brought it back.
Okay.
And I literally got a call the next day, I've got a job. Now, I'm new in Australia. I don't know anything about jobs. And not just being new in Australia. Having left Kenya, I left as a high school student, going into uni. I'd never had a proper serious job. Like I've helped my parents in their businesses, but I've never had a job where I have to consider anything. So when they called me and told me I had the job, oh my God, I felt untouchable. I was like, I'm gonna make my own money,
paid
in dollars. Like I was just like, this is amazing, until I told the people in my life at the time, and they were like, that's low. $10 an hour, that's low. And when I compared with people who were making $20 an hour, $25 an hour at the same time, I'm just like, okay, this is not making sense. So I didn't last in that job long, because it was a grueling job. I was working maybe 10 hours a day and getting $100 at the end of the day, cash in hand. And I was just like, this is not worth it, because that $100 is supposed to be probably $300. So when I found that out, obviously the passion, the juice for the job, even that hunger for that income left. And after 3 days, I quit that job and started looking for my next job, which ended up being housekeeping.
Oh, very interesting. And you said something very interesting there. You talked about a CV. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm thinking, yes, when I was applying for a job, one of the things they ask you for is a CV. And when you're just within uni, you don't really know what to put in there. As you said, you've not really ever worked. So what do you put in a CV like that one, like for a first job? Of course. Or you're coming out of uni and you've just done your first year. And then you finish your fourth year. You've never really worked, or if anything, you've just interned. What do you put in a CV like that?
See, that's the thing. I didn't know any of these things. I was lucky that the uni I went to had a careers service center for international students, and so you could go and get help with your CV, get help to structure your CV. This is free help. And I also had people in my life at the time who were working. They were in employment, and so I would just ask them, hey, which CV did you use for the job that you got? And people would be like, were very kind. People would send you their CVs. People would edit your CVs for you. Like, it was very kind, very open, very very happy to help.
So I like that. That you say, ask for help, and ask for help in different ways. For most unis, and I know even Kenyan unis, where they have a careers office, sit with them and begin to talk to them about the CV and what goes in there and as well. And then talk to people who already have CVs, and they can literally send you their CV, and you begin to see the information.
And actually, I shouldn't even say that's just Australian. Even when I came back to Kenya, I've never, to this day in my life, had a Kenyan employer. So even when I came back to Kenya, I came back obviously with my Australian experience and my Australian knowledge and my Australian CV. My CV is structured for Australian job market. And a friend here helped me with her, she sent me her CV. She works in the media, and because I've always still been interested in working in the media, she sent me her CV, and I found that very kind because it's at the time I didn't know her very well. So it's like you get into this like in this cycle of not knowing. So my journey started with complete ignorance. And then I got to a place where now I'm starting to talk to people, but still don't know really that I can negotiate a contract myself. Like, what do you mean I can negotiate a contract? What do you mean I can go back to my boss if they've said you're earning $23 an hour and tell them, no, I want 25? It took me a really long time to do that. Like I said, my first job never negotiated. My second job, which was when I signed an actual contract, was housekeeping. The people who clean rooms in hotels and things like that.
And I like the word you said, signed an actual contract. Because we've seen opportunities where people are given jobs, but then they really never really sign a contract.
Yeah, but even then, but even then, I signed a contract, but I didn't read the contract. I can't tell you. I didn't read it.
I know what you mean.
I was just like, I was earning $10 an hour and I'm earning 20 something. Sign very fast.
Real quick.
Didn't know what conditions governed my employment, what legal structure governed my employment. All I knew was you're giving me money that's probably was double an hour what I was earning before. I'm taking it. And then slowly by slowly, didn't matter to me. Slowly by slowly, I started getting into the job. Then I started wondering, what are my rights in terms of my sick leave? What are my rights in terms of this kind of leave? Now, these are things I'm wondering when I've already signed on the dotted line. And now, at this point in my life where I'm a lawyer, I worked in employment law. You see, it came full circle to the point where I was the person advising people on their contracts. And so at this point in my life, I know that whenever you sign a contract, you can't claim ignorance. Whatever you sign, you agree to.
You agree to, yes.
You've agreed to.
And the terms and the years. Yeah. And I remember, and you mentioned signing a contract and sending it. I remember that when I was getting a job at a later age, one of the things that I asked around, I happen to have a very good friend of mine who's a HR professional who told me, listen, send me your contract, let me have a look. And then she even went ahead and sent it to her sister, who's a lawyer, to have a look. And in there, we managed to begin to see things that I needed to be able to mention. I realized with that previous contract that perhaps the healthcare was not what I was really looking for. At my age, it gets to a point where there are things you must negotiate within your contract, at least according to me. And one of the ones that, like maternity leave, having this within your medical insurance, what does the medical insurance cover? Does it cover your teeth? Does it cover like the nitty gritty that you never look at? Really? What is? Are you going to be the ones and paying the tax, or are you going to be? Will the company pay the tax itself?
Speaking of tax, I need to file my returns.
Yes. Dates are coming. Yeah. Very important.
Yeah.
And then it's very serious in Kenya. Yeah. But yes, are you going to, if you're a consultant, are you the one paying tax? Yeah. And if you're the one paying tax, will you need someone who's within the finance?
An accountant to look at it for you. Yeah.
To look at it and to make sure that you're keeping your receipts with everything. And what can you tax and what can you not? If the company is paying your tax, then the words like gross and what's that? Net.
Yeah.
And
do you know what they mean and things like that? Yeah.
Yes, so that you know what will you be paid before tax, what will you be paid after tax. These are things you must read about within the contract.
Yeah, and that's another thing. It also, I think it might be an age thing because now I question almost everything. It might be an age thing, it might be the lawyer thing, it might be both. But at that age, I wasn't questioning anything. And it's not just in my professional life, even in my social life. We were having this discussion off air about questioning things in real life and how you would react. I didn't have the gumption to be like, nah, this is what I want. I didn't have it. And I put that to an age thing and a stage thing. At that age, I was new to Australia still. I'm not really realizing I'm in an environment where that's encouraged of me. I'm still very African in my nature, where we don't question things. We don't question authority. We're basically, compliance is we're trained to be compliant. So I was very compliant. up until, I started talking to the more you talk to people in Australia, the culture is to be very open with our salaries. Like if we worked in the same company, would probably know each other's salary.
Wow.
Very, like, that's just
very openly.
It's an open thing. It's discussed openly, and the reason that's done is because the union movement in Australia is very strong. And so the union movement is the trade unions who negotiate rates for people. And so you have annual leave today because of the union movement. You have sick leave today because of the union movement. And so because of that, and the strength you have in numbers, it doesn't serve me to hide how much I earn. Because if we have the same job and I'm earning $10,000 more than you, and we're doing the same thing, you need to be able to know why. You need to be able to know, actually, the potential for me to earn is actually $10,000 more. Just things like that. So I transitioned into so many jobs. Like after housekeeping, I stayed in hospitality. I did waitressing and bartending, and stayed in that for a while in various hotels. I worked for a Mexican restaurant. I worked for a 5-star restaurant. Like just very different. I worked for a cafe, and those were the easiest jobs at that time to get as a student.
What I'm liking is that you weren't, in as much as we say it's important to read your contract and to see what you're signing, it's also that you weren't really picky towards what you're getting, because picky, yes, but then not really. But
my spirit was picky.
Your spirit was picky. Because I think it plays towards an advantage when you can gain the experience. Because I think there's an age and stage where you have to work to gain the experience so that people can trust you when you're negotiating a contract. When people can see the experience and what you can show, then it shows in terms of what you're able to do. Like for me, when you're coming up with a CV later on in life, I'll say, like after my first job, when I was getting my second one, one of the things that happened there is that now I could say, this is what I've been able to do. This is what you're looking for. This is the metric you're measuring me on. This is what I've been able to do. This is what I've been able to show. So in as much as I was very willing to negotiate my contract, I think it goes both ways. It goes towards, yes, how much money, what do you feel you're worth? But then there's the other side that you're not overdoing it and keeping yourself out of opportunities when you could get an opportunity to build on. So there's an age and stage where the focus, I believe, should be on developing skill. And then there's an age and stage where, as you negotiate now, you're able to say, this is what I bring to the table as well. So where do we find the balance where you don't diminish your value, but you also do not keep yourself away from opportunities because you believe you deserve this much? At what point do we strike the balance?
I think the balance would come from a couple things. One, experience. When you have experience backing you, you did business for a number of years, so you knew how to conduct a business. You have that experience.
Yes.
You have that knowledge, like you said. Even when you're negotiating with your clients, that gave you the ability to negotiate your contract for your first ever salaried job, like your employed job. When you don't have that experience, you don't have the what do you fall back on? You don't have the knowledge to fall back on to now negotiate these things. So I say it's experience, and two, talking to people who are doing the same thing that you're doing, people who have walked the path before you. So like I said,
you just
earlier,
said a mouthful, man.
Yeah.
Let me just repeat that. Talking to people who are doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because you can ask, so what
people,
should I be expecting?
Yeah, people who've walked
first
the path
salary
before you.
Yes.
And one of my colleagues did a phenomenal thing that I'll never forget. It was a male colleague. And I was his senior. And he was earning more than me. And he told me.
One more time.
Yeah.
He was a male colleague.
Yeah.
And you were senior than him, but he was earning more than you.
He was earning more than me. And so what he did was he went to the boss, the big boss, and he said, I'm not going to accept a pay rise until the women in our office are earning the same or more than me. What that did was so number one, it's like any movement. You need an ally, you see? Like when you have when you talk about allies in the LGBTQ movement or whatever, you need an ally who's not in the movement, for instance. Do you know what I mean? So
who's
in that
looking
instance,
at it from the outside,
he's benefiting from being male, from being white. That's the privilege he enjoyed. But he didn't keep it to himself. Had he kept it to himself, I'd have never known. I'd have never known he earns more than me.
Yes.
I'd have never known I'm basically a boss to somebody who earns more than me. And when he did that is when I was just like, I think that's when I got like the courage on steroids, because then I was like, oh, okay, so you can pay this guy this much and I'm getting this much. Now forget about it.
It's time to talk.
And because I was an employment lawyer and I represented other people, I was like, it's time to represent myself.
And the reason why you were his boss is because you already had experience. You could actually fall back and say, listen, this is what I've done. This is what I'm able to bring to the table. This is how much I'm making, and this is what makes sense to me.
Yeah, so I could go to the bosses and say, actually, I want this. This is what I'm looking for. In Australia, the pays, and I think even here as well, there are grading systems. So you could be grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and the higher you are, the more money you're making. And I was like, nah, you're putting me up to the higher grade. And I wasn't even asking questions. I was like, you're putting me up to the higher grade. The following week, I was on a higher grade.
Wow,
And that's when I was like, you mean I can negotiate and someone listens and actions it. That's what gave me the courage to be like, oh my goodness, I can do this, not just for myself, even for my clients, the people I was representing. Now I even had, even more to go on, to stand on, because I was just like, I've seen it work for myself. So when I'm practicing it, I know that what I practice will work. So now for you, when it comes to, now you're in this industry, you're in your first ever job
this time.
So you're transitioning from being a business owner to now being employed, and you're dealing with a boss other than yourself for the first time. Oof. How's that been? Because if you're a business owner, you're your own boss. You set your own rules. Nobody else is telling you, Beldina, you have a meeting at 10. Beldina, go here. Beldina, take a plane there. How's that for you? I'll that transition?
There's quite a balance, like a difference between the two, and the advantages and disadvantages, I'll say, between the two, but not disadvantages really, just things you have to learn as you're doing it. And I'll say this, that the first time I was looking at being able to move from a business to a job, one of the things that I really appreciated was a consistent income. Remember, in business, if you don't work, you don't earn anything.
Oh, that's the thing,
If you're not making money, you can't make rent. If you're not selling product, then you can't pay your employees. There are a lot of aspects there. If you're not making money or selling product, or it doesn't move, there are months there that you can really, really struggle. So I was really, like, it felt like I could breathe in and out in terms of
like a weight off your shoulders now.
Releasing the pressure of it. But the reason why I also went into work, one of the major ones, is that I kept feeling like I'd possibly reached the ceiling towards how far I could take my business.
At that point,
At that point, and I needed, not that I was doing extremely well, no, I was doing okay, but then I needed more experience. I needed more exposure. I needed more people. There's something that felt like people who take businesses and are able to elevate their business from one step to the next usually have learned something and picked up something. So I was in search of something. Like the things that I needed to pick up and learn. I needed to be within a business that someone's running and see what is it that they require from people, so that I can be able to pick up the skills. And this is what I was looking for, especially when I was going into employment, because I kept looking at, okay, what's the difference? One, I didn't mind waking up early, because I was used to having to do it for my business anyway. The thing about business that no one ever tells you is that you're always working. Even when you're on weekend, even when you're on holiday, you are always working. So I find that sometimes I translate it to work. Even when I'm on annual leave, sometimes you'll find me, I'll discover something, find something, I'll be like, ooh, that makes sense. Ooh. And then I start chatting.
So you're always on. Always on. Your brain is always...
But then it also gives you the freedom to sometimes be like, okay, maybe it needs to just not go off completely. So that was one major one. Reporting to a boss was an interesting dynamic
shift.
Because one of the major ones that happened, one of the major things that happened to me was, at this point, remember, I wasn't used to reporting to anybody, so I could run my business the way I felt it. But then one of the things that I had to learn were reports. Like, how do I work towards reports? How do I work towards gaining more? How do I report back? If this person needs a report on this, on this, on this. Sometimes you can have a hard headache when you're keen and you're like, oof, I don't know. I need to learn how to do it. And it was a learning process for me. Remember, this is something that I never really done before.
Were you able to say, hey, I need help?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually asked everyone I knew from
Yeah.
using systems. Perhaps I was used to using Google and everything to do with Google in terms of emails and contacting customers and everything. Suddenly I was learning about Microsoft. This was something I remember one of my friends sitting me down and saying, okay, this is what you need. This is, and I was not afraid to say I don't know. And that's
Why
one thing.
though?
I kept saying
It's a new, uncharted territory.
Yes, I kept. People are afraid to say they don't know.
Yeah.
People are afraid to say I
Very
don't know how
much
to
so,
do this.
yeah.
So afraid that they don't get help.
Yeah.
But then remember, and it did help that I went from working for myself to working for an international employer as opposed to a Kenyan employer. Difference in terms of the approach and everything, because for them when you say I don't know, it means that they need to teach you, they need to find something, a course and everything. One major one that I really picked up and I tell people you must learn is Excel. Excel has so many elements. Yo,
Excel is something I struggle with.
Pivot tables and everything.
I need like a, what do you call, like business retreat. What do they call it? Like a workshop for Excel. Does my head in. Does my head in completely. And like even in as we talk about the intersection between the journey to through formal education and what you've learned through the school of life. When I was in uni, I never asked for help. And I needed the help. I needed the help. I needed the help from my lecturers. I needed the help from my tutors.
How come?
But
why not?
I think number one, it's one of my, do I call it trauma responses, or like I'm not good at asking for help. Like it's something I have to address in therapy. I'm not good at saying help me. I just die with my problems. So obviously at a very young age, before I realized at this big age that I need to learn how to ask for help. When I was younger, like for instance, the 844 school system and even the British school system, I don't really remember going to a teacher and saying I need help, or even that being encouraged. And I make it a conscious effort now even to tell my students, hey, ask for help. When you go to uni and you start your course, and you find maybe you're falling behind. I couldn't understand the Australian accent. I couldn't understand my lecturers. At first, I'd sit in the lecture, I'm like, why is he singing?
Hey, you and me both. Yeah.
Aussies kind of sing their words.
Like
so I couldn't understand. I was like, oh my God, I don't understand this guy. But instead of going and asking for extra help after the class, I would just carry on.
I will deal. So, I will have to sort it myself. If I ask for help, perhaps it will show that I'm a little weak.
It shows weakness.
Yes.
It shows will anyone take me seriously?
Yes.
And actually asking for help is a sign of strength, which I realized much later. There's nothing wrong with going to someone and saying, hey, I don't understand this concept you were explaining in class. Please teach me. And not only that, but lecturers, I don't know if it's the same here, but lecturers abroad are the ones who could connect you to jobs. They're like, for instance, if the dean of the law school is probably someone who is on his way to being a judge one day, or has friends in the industry, was in private practice at some point. Like it's the people who you need to talk to and engage with are those people, because those are the people who will propel your career. That's what I was saying in the previous episode. I was saying, make friends with people who do things other than what you do.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
I like that.
Yeah. So now you are getting a job in the pandemic, right?
Yes.
Are you working in an office at this point? Are you working online?
No,
Are you working?
I was working from home, and everyone's working from home. Remember, at this point, I moved back.
Your
home.
workmate is the kettle.
My workmate is the kettle.
The microwave.
And my mother's upstairs running her own meeting, and my father is in the bedroom running his own meeting. So we're there hearing each other's background noise.
Crazy, yeah.
I'm telling you. And then the most you can move is the compound. Outside, inside, you're like.
This is your first ever job experience.
I'm telling you,
gosh.
it's a lot, but I do thank God for the person I had at my boss at that time, because he understood a lot of the things I didn't know.
Okay.
And because personality-wise, you'd find he'd be what I'd call an analytical person who likes documents, numbers. What do the numbers say?
Yeah.
Myself, I'm very expressive. I'm a driver expressive. Yeah. What that means is that I like to be able to lead.
Driver expressive.
I like to be able to lead, but then I I'm very expressive. I have a lot of emotion behind things, and that means I connect much better with people than an analytical person. But then he was backing me up with his
This
knowledge.
is interesting. I've never heard this
numbers.
terminology, the
Yes.
analytical driver. I think I need to find out
It's a
the
personality
whole...
test.
Yeah, okay.
And this was a personality test sidebar
Yeah.
that I did when I went for my first Australia trip for my current job.
Ah.
Like one of our sessions was learning about the
Personality
personalities.
types, right.
Yes.
Okay.
And knowing
I need to talk to my boss.
at
Yours
what
is-
point what does your boss do? What kind of personality is he? What does he need to lead best? What do I need
Right.
to lead? Not that one personality will lead and another won't. No.
Okay.
You actually need each other to be able to
Yeah,
lead and do
absolutely.
really well. But then noticing your personality type, you realize, what do I need in the
To thrive.
Yes,
Like,
and
yeah.
what do I need to back me up? Like right now, if I was to run a business, one of the things that I've picked up is that because I'm very expressive and I'm a driver, I'll get business and everything, but I need someone who knows numbers. You see, these are things I was looking for. And I need someone who is basically based towards leaning towards what do the numbers tell us,
Yeah.
how do they move. I've learned to read them and get them very, very well, but I need someone who this is where the heart lies and everything, because it does give some stability to your business, especially. So these are things that I was picking up completely. So my first boss, and God bless his soul, did a lot of good in terms of training me and noticing where I was at, picking up my strengths and saying, okay, Bildina, you are very good with people. You are very good. So do not dampen this.
I love bosses like that. I had a
Yes.
boss like that who,
Yes, you're very good with people.
Yeah.
You're very good at expressing yourself.
Yeah.
Students want to be around you.
yeah.
Be able to maximize on this
Yeah.
as you learn the rest. And this is the area that we were working with,
Yes.
especially.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I had a boss like that who really, like, within the team, he picked on everybody's strengths. So he's like, okay, your strength is excel and you like to work on your own and you kind of like to be, left alone and do this, then you do this for the team. You, D, you like to talk to people, you like to do this, you like to do that, but you don't like to be micromanaged, do you? Like, he gave us the freedom and he elevated me to such a level of confidence, like, oh my God, you couldn't tell me nothing. You couldn't tell me nothing because I had the backing of a white man, number
Who's
one,
in this.
who is the most privileged human on the planet.
Yes.
But just the backing for, like, I was in situations where I had racist encounters with people because I'm a black lawyer, and people, for instance, go to my boss and they're like, I want an Australian lawyer. My boss was like, you're not getting anybody else. It's D or nothing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Pick.
Yeah. So, like, that confidence to be able to back me, and he's like, I said so. So I wish I didn't need the backing. I wish on my own merit I was, taken seriously. But just to have that backing gave me the confidence to even walk in that room where I'm being discriminated against and be
you're
like,
okay.
but he's,
I'm telling you, and
Yo,
shout out to all.
but he said.
Yes. Shout out to all the bosses who are out there doing it. You would not believe it. My first boss was actually Kenyan.
Look at that,
And
yeah.
and shout out to bosses who
Yeah.
understand themselves
Yeah.
and are able to see what you need towards
That's exactly
growth.
it. What you said, it's understanding themselves. It's having
not-
enough confidence in yourself to know, yes, I'm the boss, but being the boss doesn't mean I have to push around people and show them how much I know. In fact, my boss used to be very quick to say when he didn't know something. He was very quick to say, oh my God, you've taught me something, or I'm going to research and help you find out. And just that humility to be like, oh my God, he's been in this industry maybe 10, 15 years more than me, but he actually has the humility to say, I don't know the answer to this question. Let's go and dig through some law books and find out. Let me go over the weekend and think about it. Do you know what I mean? And it's things that I wish I knew when I was younger. It's things that came with age
And the stage itself.
and the stage.
Yes.
And this is why we have these conversations,
Yes.
is to cut the journey short for somebody else.
Yes, and to be able, and I just sidebar on this one, that we do recognize that sometimes there are people who do not necessarily receive a fantastic boss or a boss who understands them the first time, and how to deal with such a situation can be a little hectic, especially. And there's also the mentality that people go in, they'll say, oh, if you have this gender boss, then they'll probably be mean. Even this other gender boss, they'll probably be nice. And myself, one of the things that I've learned, one, is this not to stereotype and go with that kind of mentality, because sometimes you're going into a situation where the person you're working with, you'll not always have the best person. You'll not always, that cannot be the expectation that we set, ideally. Myself, in terms of business, the people I had to deal with were people from all walks of life. And sometimes some of them, it was an interesting situation to be told.
Yeah.
Extreme sport, I'm telling you. But then I'm learning to be able to stand up for yourself on some of these things, and how to communicate what you need, and how to communicate the environment that you need. And this is something that I always ask people when they're doing their interviews, and we'll mention interviews as we keep going, that when you're doing your interview, one of the best questions that I've learned to ask is, what's the culture like in your company?
I also ask, what makes you like working here?
Yes.
Because I want to know if I want to work for you too.
Yeah.
It's
with experience now, it becomes very,
yeah.
like, once you've paid, it's almost like you have to pay a price at the beginning to gain experience.
Yeah.
But once you've paid a bit of experience, then it does give you the courage to be able to begin to ask questions. What's the culture like?
Yeah.
Because someone looks at it and says, oh, that's an interesting question. And you can always tell how they answer in terms of what they say, what the culture is like. And then they are aware that from the beginning, this is your expectation.
Yeah.
That
I
you're
ask that, and I ask, what's your management style? Because I cannot deal with
that's
being
an interesting one.
micromanaged. I
What's
can't
your
handle
management style?
micromanagement. I can't
Yes.
handle it. That's something I say at interview stage nowadays. I do not work well being micromanaged. I work well being thrown in the deep end, and then when I can't figure something out, I'll ask you.
I'll come back and
You know what I mean? Whereas there's some people who are like, no, hold my hand through this.
And there's no wrong or right way to do it. Of course, we're just giving you tips of some of the things we ask that will determine whether you want to work in the place, but also determine, ideally, will set the standard from the beginning, what you're looking for.
But also, Beldina, do you know the other thing that I'm quite, I guess I need to know more about is the Kenyan culture, even in the workplace. See, for instance, I had a lot of confidence in Australian workplaces to speak my whole mind, and I would still keep my job. Whereas when I hear stories about Kenyan workplaces, you can, let's say there's a team meeting, whatever, you can barely speak, you can't question the CEO, you can't raise something contentious. All you do is agree and nod and yes and no, and I mean, no, you're basically
take instruction.
You're compliant once more. You're just being compliant. So when you think about the Kenyan market, Is it a cultural?
It's a market that
difference
you
thing.
require. There's a bit of culture difference, and I will say this so that this is not the expectation that our viewers have, that you can speak your mind and everything. It depends on how you measure and how
That's
you're
the
able
thing.
to. Now you have to have a lot of wisdom in terms of how you approach something.
What your current
job is like. Yes.
What the culture is like.
Have a lot of wisdom, and that's always my advice. Have a lot of wisdom. And here's the other thing: you can always read and tell how someone will work. I'll give you an example. My current job, I'm still with an international employer, second job now. And what is interesting is that I realized that when I want to be able to get funding for something, because he's also an analytical person, notice I've realized I work best with someone who knows numbers and knows how they're moving. Usually I have to present my case in a way that he'll understand to support me. So as opposed to, ideally what happens is you have to learn the person you're working for. Because at the end of the day, there is, you can't just say, okay, I'm right and that works completely. You have to be able to learn the person you're working with and see how best can we be able to work and grow together. The other thing I've learned is even when someone is extremely difficult, what you're saying in that kind of environment, especially in Kenya, really does matter. Really matters. So I say avoid 3 C's: criticizing, complaining, and I forget the other C. I'll remember it. But in terms of criticizing, complaining, these are things that ideally we adjust and we grow with.
Yeah.
So ideally, with the Kenyan environment, with wisdom, and this is just wisdom from someone who's worked within the Kenyan environment, within business in itself, being able to recognize your person. I find, let me tell you, compliments and recognizing the strengths within a person makes them how they show up. Have you ever noticed people show up very differently for different people?
Yeah.
You can
Oh,
find,
yeah.
You can find the same boss shows up very crazily for someone
Yeah,
really, really well.
yeah.
And it could be it could be removing all the other
Yeah.
aspects that people talk about in terms of just, but then they show up very differently for another one.
Yes.
And you wonder why
Yeah.
do they show up very differently for these different people?
Yeah.
But it's what someone really brings to people.
Yeah.
Very, very important. What does someone really bring to you? What does someone really bring to the table?
Yeah.
What happens there? So I think there is a way to use a lot of wisdom to be
Yeah.
able to maneuver your job place as well. I always ask questions. You'll find me, I'll sit with someone if I'm struggling. Perhaps I've just gained a team and I'm struggling to be able to manage a certain personality. If I can find someone who advise me and tell me, I'll go sit with someone and say, this is what I'm facing. Again, asking for help. This is what I'm experiencing. What can I do? How can I grow?
And then also the legal hat has to come back on.
Yes.
So apart from wisdom, the other thing that I find that probably ties people's hands behind their backs is so the ability to negotiate either a pay rise or better conditions is based on whatever legal instrument governs your employment, right? So let's start with contract. You've read your contract. Maybe it's referenced a collective agreement if your workplace is covered by a union, or there's no collective agreement and the contract is king. So if there's a collective agreement, obviously that's better because that's rates negotiated that are higher than, minimum wage, higher than industry standard, that kind of thing. So when you have a collective agreement, you can go to it and check, okay, for this grade or this level, this person has this skill. This person who has this skill earns this much. So therefore, I can match my skill level, my experience, my level of autonomy based on the collective agreement and be able to negotiate a higher salary based on that, or better working conditions or flexible working conditions. What I find in Kenya or what I've heard is a lot of people probably don't know what collective agreement covers their employment. Am I even covered by a collective agreement? Have I ever known these things? So these are the things I emphasize when I talk to people. I'm like, check your contract. Your contract will tell you everything you need to know. Because if you are covered by an enterprise agreement, in Australia it's enterprise agreement, collective agreement in Kenya, it will be mentioned in your contract. Then you can go and have a look and say, oh, okay, cool. But what about industries like the creative industry where there's no actual collective agreement, there's no collective rate, there's no standardized rate? This is what I was saying last time, which is we need some sort of industry standard, especially for creative sector.
Yes,
because who says how much actors are paid? Who
says how much
sets that rate?
photographers are paid?
Do you know what I mean?
Who says how much videographers are
Yeah,
earning?
producers are paid.
Who says
artists?
What if
artists.
a company like Coca-Cola
BN posted something that they received. Was it 14,000 shillings from MCSK? 14,000 for an artist Sauti Sol level. Like you're cooked.
What do you buy? What don't you buy?
Yeah, you cooked.
Yeah, but I do agree. The contract, very, very important to be able to look at it. But then as well, go out there and learn. It is your responsibility to learn. And you've taught me something today. You said, what collective are you under? What does your contract say? You mentioned another one. What group are you?
What grade? Yeah.
What grade are you in? How much should you be earning? This is within the whole system. It is there in Kenya as well.
Yeah.
And then another one that I hear as well is apart from the contract and everything, it's good to also know how to negotiate. I'll always tell people LinkedIn Learning is one of the greatest things ever created.
Yeah.
There's even a class there
that
says how to negotiate.
It's
a whole training.
I haven't seen that.
How to talk about how to approach your boss about an idea. They have so many of them there.
Yeah.
Pick up these lessons.
Yeah.
Pick up these lessons because they go a long way to teach you even how to say it and how to approach it and what to say.
Yeah.
Be a consistent learner, a person who's learning and growing in this year and curious to be able to do so.
So I think the takeaways from this episode would be, especially if you're young, if you've got a contract, you don't understand nothing, get help. Ask for help. Get somebody you trust to go through it, to give you advice. Maybe get access to a lawyer. But if you don't have access to a lawyer, because that would probably require money, get someone you trust to at least, maybe someone with some years of experience.
Have an auntie who's a
you know what I mean?
or
someone you trust who can look at, who can actually look at your contract, help you even have start to have the conversations around negotiating. What do I accept? How do I negotiate terms? How do I know what leave I have? How do I ask and apply for leave? Just things like that. And then also, don't be scared to ask for help. Like, don't be scared to say, I don't know this. Even to your boss, okay, that one I'll put an asterisk, because in Kenya, I know the culture is very different here. And so I'll say what Beldina said, which is be wise about how you go about, the disagreements and things like that. But especially as a young person, make sure you're across, like what I like what you said in terms of it's your responsibility. The buck stops with you, because you can't tell someone, oh, I signed, but I was ignorant.
I don't want
when
to
you go to court
anymore.
You'll just see a signature and that's it. Signature means I agree. I agree to these terms and conditions. And if you are someone who's working in an industry where it's God for us all, get a contract, get advice, get something to protect yourself. Like that's
check
what
the
I would
union,
say.
because a lot with even those ones you'll find the people with a union and everything. And last but not least, remember that this is a learning process. This is something that you pick up, this is something that you learn, and this is something that you can continuously do. So as you look for your next opportunity, as you check for your next one, pick up the few things that you're able to ask. What do you ask at an interview? What could work really, really well? I remember, by the way, I'd never really done an interview until I did my first job. And one of the things that I did is YouTube. Hey,
oh, really?
Which questions would they ask you when you're looking for a sales job? Which questions do they ask you for marketing? Which questions? How do you answer? And let me tell you, those
what
guys,
are your strengths and weaknesses?
YouTube learning, they taught me thoroughly and very, very evidently. And I picked up a lot of lessons in there.
If anything else fails, YouTube University
and LinkedIn University as well. It will give you and last but not least, work on your LinkedIn profile. Make sure this is where people look for you there, because you're able to see their information there. You're able to see what someone has done, what they're able to do, and what you're looking to progress to. But anyway, it's been us, Ages and Stages Podcast KE. I am Beldina Kasema on all socials. This is
D. And before we go, let us know in the comments if you work in the Kenyan sector, if you work in the Kenyan market, what are your experiences like? If you work in an international market, what are your experiences like? Do you relate with what we've talked about today? Do you not? Let us know in the comments. You can find us at Ages and Stages Podcast KE on YouTube, on Instagram, and podcast platforms. So, we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye.